Hi and welcome back to another Scraps and Ink crafting video, and today we're going to make a sandy beachy background. And I previously made this background for a design team project, and I'm just pulling up my Instagram and showing you where you can find it. That I'm just going to recreate this background. There are some stamps out on the market where you can create a really beachy sandy scene, and that's great. They're really expensive in my opinion. I don't want to spend $50 on a stamp when I could just make it myself and make it my own. So I'm just going over the items I used. I used a couple of distress inks in Salty Ocean, Vintage Photo, Scattered Straw, and Walnut Stain. And then I used a couple of Gina K inks that are Blue Denim, Blue Lagoon, and Blue Raspberry. And I also used Nina Classic Crest 110-pound solar white paper, some dry baby cloths, and I used the regular baby cloths just to, the baby wipes just to clean my surface. You don't have to, just use whatever you have. That's just what I choose to use. I also used Distress Oxide Broken China. And here I show off that I made my own stencil. So I do have a Cricut. It's not going to get featured very often on this page, but I used my Cricut to make a stencil, like a cloudy infinity cloud stencil, and it works for me. It works great. As you can see in the corner, it gets a lot of use, so it works. Also, one thing I didn't mention is I bring in a distress ink, Evergreen Bow. It's more of like a teal green color that I bring in a little bit later, and you'll see why. I like to give it a little bit of a natural green look to the ocean. So here I created a curve for the water so that I can create my waterline and my clouds in the distance. In retrospect, I should have cut this paper a little bit thicker because you'll see it's kind of pitifully lined there. But it works, and it did what I needed it to do, and it didn't bleed onto the clouds, so I'm happy. Here I'm cutting out the waterline. I used just a regular scrap piece of paper. Actually, I used a piece of Lawn Fawn's Nitpicky paper, a scrap paper, and honestly, I'm fine with it. I don't use it all that often. I've got tons of it. I blocked off or masked off a little tiny corner of my paper here that I'm working on, just so that I can keep the sand part separate. And here where I'm blending is going to eventually be the ocean. So I start off with Salty Ocean, and I just coat the entire paper with Salty Ocean, and then I bring in some Gina K ink so that I can create the depth in that back part of the ocean. And you can see I had to pull out my cell phone a couple times to use it as a reference. So when you actually look at an ocean, the water closest to the surface is really clear in most cases. I mean, obviously it's not true for every ocean, but the water closest to the surface is very clear, light blue, sometimes it's white. And then as you get farther away, it gets deeper, it gets darker. And that's kind of what I was trying to emulate. I was trying to copy depth. And I go back and forth with a bunch of distress inks and Gina K inks. Well, just the one distress ink and a couple of Gina K inks. By the way, if you have not blended Gina K inks with distress inks, I highly recommend it. They blend very beautifully. I believe, don't quote me on this because I'm not an expert, but I believe they are both dye inks. I could be wrong. I feel like I'm wrong. Anyway, they blend really well together, so you should try it. And you can expand your palette, because it's not obvious. I definitely don't have every color of distress ink, and yeah, but I have almost, I have a good amount of Gina K inks, and I love her inks. So here I'm just going back and forth with the Gina K inks, and I had originally brought out, I think it was like three or four Gina K blue shades, and I ended up using only two, and the mid one, I think it's like the blue raspberry or something, but I used a deep color, which was the blue denim, and then I used a mid color, so kind of like, think Copic markers. I used the mid color, and then the lightest color was the Salty Ocean. So I took off my mask for the beach, and I took what part? I took the part, the opposite part, the other part of the paper, and covered the rest of my scene with the bigger sheet. And here I go in with the scattered straw, and I kind of do the same concept with the beach that I did with the ocean. I go in with one color, in this case it's the scattered straw, and I coat the entire work area with that one color. And it's kind of like coloring with Copics. You use your lightest tone and you coat the paper. Some people do, some people don't. You coat the paper with your lightest tone, and then you go in with all of your other colors and blend it out. So that's what I do here. And then I come in with my vintage photo to give it that wet look closer to where the waves are going to be coming in. Now, I go in with a really light hand on the vintage photo, and I didn't entirely like the way it was looking when I went in with a blending sponge. So that's when I took my dried baby wipe and gave it more of a detailed blend closer to that line. And then I pulled out the walnut stain to give it an even darker, more wet appearance. And towards the end of the video, you'll see me come back in with these two colors just to re-emphasize the wet look of the sand. I really only did that, and I'll come back to it, but I do that because the heat embossing actually kind of takes away a little bit of what I just did. So here I go, and once I'm done getting the wet looking sand in, I come back in with my other colors and I blend everything out to give it a more smoother appeal. So once I do what's called the peel and reveal, you can see there's like a little bit of white between the sand and the water, and that's fine by me. We're going to cover that anyway. Don't worry about it. But I did trim off the side, and I could have very easily gone back and blended over it. And this is where I come back in with the evergreen bough to give it that green look. So I could have blended over that spot to the right, but I wanted to cut it off anyway because I'm going to end up trimming down the panel and matting it. Now I use my Versamark pen. Versamarker, I guess is what it's called. And you have to use the brush tip. And this I'm intentionally doing while all my inks are wet. That's kind of the point of this technique. So I just scribbled along the waterline and dumped a bunch of embossing powder over my work surface. I tried to keep it off of the sky. Some of it ended up on the sky, but I brushed it away. And now you can see me getting messy, just rubbing my fingers into the sand, so to speak, into the waves, and brushing my fingers across the water area. And I really like this technique because it's messy and because it really gives it that beach wave look, I think. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Here's my favorite part of the video, when I heat emboss. And I honestly I could just watch, I don't know, like videos after videos of just heat embossing. Is that weird? That's so weird. So that's it. Just like I said earlier, I'm going to come back in with those vintage photo and the walnut stain to really darken that area down by the foam. But there you have it, your very own beach scene. And you can actually make the shore, the beach part, bigger. You don't have to make it angled if you don't want to. You can straighten out the horizon if you need to. Like, you can seriously play around with this all you want, and you're not just limited to the beach being on the bottom. You can have the beach being on top, whatever you want. So thanks for joining me. If you liked the process video, hit a thumbs up and join me for next time when I make a card out of this scene. Bye now.